Mark, let's kick it off with you yesterday making news on two fronts. One, you said if things keep going this way, in terms of the mail-in vote, the early mail-in vote, I guess mail-in and early voting, then we will likely know before Election Day who has won, suggesting it would be Donald Trump. So what are you saying? Why? Where do you get that from?
Well, make sure you put the if in all caps, because this was not like total theoretical, hypothetical. But the point is, Republicans are off to a surprisingly good start in the view of Democrats, independent analysts, and Republicans in how they're competing in the early vote, mail-in and in-person, drop box, all that kind of voting. The likelihood is, Democrats argue, that things will even out, that their lead will not be as big in the early vote as it was in 2020, but it would be big enough to withstand what everyone expects will be a superior performance on Election Day by the Republicans. This is not the way it's been since time immemorial, but for the last few cycles, Republicans have swarmed to the polls on Election Day. And the question is, do they have big enough advantage on Election Day to offset the early vote? This year, because Republicans so far are doing better on early vote, some people believe that if the trajectory continues, this would lead to an Election Day where the Democrats couldn't catch up. I'm saying on this trajectory, it's not a prediction. It's not rooting for Trump. And I don't think it's particularly controversial. The big question, as we discussed in the morning meeting all the time, is who's voting early? Is it Republicans who otherwise wouldn't vote? Or is it Republicans who are moving their vote from Election Day to the early vote? Either way, Democrats are hoping to do better and need to do better.
But Mark, even if it is Republicans moving their vote from Election Day to the early vote, that's a good thing for Republicans, is it not? Because it's a vote in the bank. It's not dependent on weather or the kids getting sick, et cetera. And it allows the people canvassing to focus their efforts on people who have not yet cast a vote.
100%. So that's one advantage for Republicans. Another thing to look at is the percentage of the vote in Georgia, for instance, is lower in terms of Black participation in the election than it normally is. Will it even out? Is it possible that Black voters will vote what I like to call late early? Yes, it is. But all I said yesterday was, if things stay the way they are, then Democrats are in big trouble in most of the battleground states where we have early voting data.
You know, Megyn,
it was a reaction to the extraordinarily high numbers for Republicans on the early vote that we haven't seen. I get it. Go ahead, Sean.
Yeah.
I was going to say, I spent two presidential cycles at the RNC having to make excuses why we weren't doing as well in early vote, right? That we were going to vote on Election Day, that the other side, the Democrats, were cannibalizing their Election Day voters and just getting to vote early. I now know what it's like to be on the other side, watching Democrats use the excuses that I used for two cycles. The fact of the matter is Republicans have never done well in modern history with these kind of numbers. You look at Nevada, for example, both Clark County, where Vegas is, and Washoe County, where Reno is, we're crushing it. Never mind the rural counties where we traditionally do better. They're in big trouble. Republicans are up 12,000 votes in the early vote in Nevada. That was the one state where I was really nervous was Nevada, and not so anymore. This is great news for Republicans. And to your point, Megyn, there are some estimates that to contact a voter early on is about $12. If you have to keep pursuing them, it costs on average about $100. So the earlier that a voter votes on the Republican side, we save about $88. That's money that can be used to go after what we call low propensity voters, people who only vote in one of four or two of four elections. Plus, you've got to get these people who just registered out, which we're seeing really good numbers on in voter registration in places like Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Arizona. So for Republicans, this is like the kid that was getting an F suddenly getting a B+ or an A-. You're ecstatic as a parent.
Dan, how are Democrats seeing this early voting data?
We'd rather be Sean Spicer right now than.
No one's ever said that, Dan. No one has ever said that.
Look, I think Democrats are nervous. I mean, Megyn, you said it. Whether it's a new voter, pre-existing voter, we'd rather have them in the bank, in the column than not. And what is concerning is that, traditionally the Democrats run up the score in the urban areas. And so far, what we're seeing is urban turnout is low. And we've talked about it on the morning meeting. We've talked about it when we visited with you. Who's not turning up right now? Young voters, people of color, young Black men, Latinos in Nevada, as Sean was just saying. And so it's not that they won't turn out, but it's, we would rather be have the shoe on the other foot. The good news, if there is some for Democrats, is women are turning out at a much higher rate right now than men. The gender gap being what it is, I think Democrats feel like they're going to do well with women. And also the people running the Harris campaign, David Plouffe, Jen O'Malley Dillon, they ran Obama's 2012 campaign. They are the best at getting out the vote. And so I think the hope for Democrats, and it really is hope right now, is that while we may be struggling today, ultimately by the evening of November 5th, our voters will come home and turn out.
This show encourages honest conversations, which isn't easy in today's media environment with big tech deciding who and what gets amplified. Well, there's a news platform that prioritizes free speech and transparency without controlling the narrative. Ground News. Ground News is an app and website that aggregates related articles from around the world, highlighting each source's political bias and corporate influence. Here's an example. Recently, CBS News told their staff not to refer to Jerusalem as being in Israel. And guess who didn't cover this? Left-leaning media. On Ground News, you can see more than 90% of the coverage is coming from right-leaning sources. Ground News has an entire blind spot feed with stories like this that are receiving lopsided coverage. It reveals how media narratives are shaping the conversation, and they're offering our viewers 40% off their Vantage plan, which gives you unlimited access to their website and app. They are independent and supported by subscribers, not corporate interests. Check them out at groundnews.com/Megyn. That's ground, GROUND, news.com/Megyn to take back control of the news you consume. Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.